G'day guys, and welcome to today's video. Now I want to begin with a question. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your expectations of what was meant to happen or what you wanted to happen has actually led to either like fear or disappointment or any kind of other negative outcome or negative emotion? Or where your assumptions about something have actually been completely off base, just completely wrong? Well, in today's video, we're going to be looking into a concept that can actually change the way that we interact with the world around us. Now, this concept, it's about making no assumptions and placing no blame on external things. Okay, so this sounds quite simple, but it is much easier said than done. But if we can apply this concept to our lives, it can lead to a more peaceful and understanding life. The great William Shakespeare once said, "Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Now, this line is more than just one of the greatest pieces of English poetry ever written. It's also a very powerful piece of wisdom. It challenges us to think about the power we have over our perception of our life and things that happen in our lives. But unfortunately, this wisdom is also often overlooked or just forgotten about. Think about how many times our assumptions or our biases color our actual experiences and interactions in our own lives. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing philosophers like Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, who informed us that nothing outside of our reasoned mind can harm or hinder us. Only we have that power. And we're also going to look at one of the agreements from the fantastic book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. And the agreement we'll look at is never make assumptions. And this is to understand how jumping to conclusions can actually lead us astray and cause us pain in our lives. Now, on top of just discussing these ideas, we're also going to look at real life, real world examples to bring these concepts to life. So by the end of the video, it's my goal to give you a new perspective on how to view the world and how to interact with it best. So let's jump straight into it now and see how this shift in our mindset can actually work wonders and work miracles in our own lives. Now let's begin with the great Stoic philosopher and Stoic thinker Epictetus. Now he also said one of my other favorite quotes, and it goes something like this. I might be paraphrasing, but the main heart of the message is, it's not what happens to us, but how we respond to what happens to us, which truly matters. And that's the idea that's going to be at the center or the heart of today's discussion. Because think about it. How often do we allow external forces, external factors to upset us, to make us angry or annoyed and just rob us of our peace of mind? Sadly, I'm sure that it's more than we would like to admit. But what if we could change that? What if we could cultivate a state of mind that was so strong and so resilient that no matter what happened in our external world, it didn't actually knock us off course or cause us any kind of harm? This is the power of the reasoned mind or the rational mind. And it's a concept in Stoic philosophy that is immensely practical, and it will make a huge improvement to your quality of life. Now, in the Stoic philosophy, when they talk about the reasoned or the rational mind, they tend to say that there's three components to it. So the first component is self-awareness. So this is being aware of your feelings and your thoughts. Okay, so it's understanding how you're feeling at the moment. So let's say that there is something in your external world that has kind of triggered you and it's made you quite angry and quite annoyed. Okay, that's self-awareness. So the first step is just to be aware that you've been triggered and now you're in an angry, annoyed mood. Component number two then becomes self-examination. So this is when we start to ask ourselves, like, wait a minute, why has this made me so angry? Why am I so annoyed at what just happened? and we're trying to get to the root of the feeling. Okay, so what is it about that external stimuli that's made us so angry and so annoyed? Then, once we've kind of come to the realization of why we're annoyed and what's actually happening, then we come to the last component, which is self-determination. So this is where you get to exert your will over what has happened to you. Okay, so remember back to the quote, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us. So self-determination is the process of responding to whatever's happened. So maybe you can't do anything about what has happened, okay? But just by understanding that, you can then choose to relax, let it go. And then that way you're no longer angry or annoyed. Or maybe you do realize that there is something you can do. And the simple fact of creating a plan of action is what's going to alleviate that anger and that annoyance, because now you know you can do something about it. So that's why the Stoics tell us to develop a reasoned or rational mind. So we can be self-aware, aware of what we're feeling. We can examine exactly why we're feeling that way. And then through self-determination, we can choose the best course of action to remove that negative feeling and continue on with our life. So that's the first key concept there, guys. And that's about removing any blame from the external sources, external stimuli that comes into your world. Okay, don't place any blame outside of yourself, okay? Because you should only focus on what you can control. So try to build that rational, reasoned mind. Try to become self-aware, okay? Then examine why you're feeling that way, and then be self-determining. You make the choices of how you're going to respond and how you're going to live your life. Take responsibility for that. Now, let's move on to concept number 2, and this is about never making assumptions, okay? Because assumptions can lead us down a path of disappointment and misunderstandings. Now, in his fantastic book, The 4 Agreements, which is personally one of my favorite books of all time and I believe should be required reading for all schools, Don Miguel Ruiz gives us the 3rd agreement in those 4 agreements, which is never make assumptions. Now again, this is simple, but it is much easier said than done. We are so used to making assumptions, judging things as we see them, that if you've spent your whole life doing it, it might take a little time to kind of shift your mindset to where you're not making assumptions, but the reward is worth the work. So now I want to illustrate this point by telling you a little story that happened a few months ago. So a few months ago, I was looking into reading the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Okay, it's something that I've been looking for a while and finally got my hands on the book. But as I was doing my research on where to find the book, because I live in Vietnam and I needed an English translation, so it was a little bit hard to find, I stumbled onto the website Goodreads, and there was a review left by this person about the book Siddhartha. Okay, now if you don't know, the book Siddhartha follows Siddhartha, who is the main character of the story, and it's essentially a story about this person's spiritual evolution through life, the many lives that he lives, all the lessons he learns, and that kind of thing. Okay, so it's like a spiritual journey kind of book. Now this review was quite negative. Okay, she was really annoyed, and you could just tell by the way that she was writing that she didn't really enjoy the book. But what I found profound about this was the fact that the things that she was annoyed at had nothing to do with the book. Okay, so she started off by saying, I was really disappointed in this book. I was expecting it to be kind of like the story of Buddha, the historical Buddha, but that was never what Hermann Hesse set out to do. He didn't set out to write a book about the historical Buddha. She just had it in her mind for some reason, maybe, because the character's name is Siddhartha, which is very close to the historical Buddha's name. Maybe it was the imagery, maybe she'd read other reviews or just heard things about this book. But she was really, really angry at the book and the author because the book didn't provide the story that she expected it to. Which I found quite weird because, again, it was never advertised that way, at least not that I'm aware of. And Hermann Hesse never set out to write that book. He literally just set out to write a book about this person's spiritual journey. So this woman, she made an assumption in her mind about what the book was, and she was happy to read a book about that. But then once she realized that the book wasn't actually about that, she got mad at the author and the book and left it a poor review. So can you see how by her making the assumption that this book should have been a historical retelling of the historical Buddha's life, when in fact the book wasn't about that at all, led to her disappointment? If she just went in saying, okay, I'm just going to read this book and see what it is, then there wouldn't have been such a comparison to what she believed it should be to what it actually was. And it's her belief in what it should have been compared to what it actually was, which is what caused her that pain and, the disappointment of reading a book that she thought was going to be something different. Now, hopefully, guys, you can start to see how that story relates back to that crucial point that we've been discussing, which is the misplacing of blame. Because blame is quite a tricky little thing. Okay? Our mind always wants to be right. So it's much easier for us to look outside of ourselves for something to blame, and it's much harder to look within and place the blame on ourselves, our own thinking, and the assumptions that we make. Now, this story also illustrates how our fears and our disappointments are often self-created. Okay? So we make an assumption about something, and then when that thing doesn't live up to our assumptions, we blame it. But what if, instead of blaming the external thing, we actually stop and ask ourselves, why are we making these assumptions, or questioning our assumptions? And what if, instead of blaming that other thing, the external thing that we made assumptions about, we examine our roles in our reactions? This goes back to developing that rational mind, understanding why we made that assumption and how we're feeling. Then with the self-examination, we start to ask ourselves, why did we make that assumption? Why did we just assume it was going to be this way? And why am I so annoyed that it ended up being something different? And then again, through self-determination, we can then choose the best course of action to start getting around this. Okay, so that's where true growth and understanding actually begins, is through that self-awareness, self-examination, and then through self-determination. And that can be made easier by just never making assumptions about how something should be or how something will turn out to be. Now, as we come to an end of today's video, let's just take a quick moment to reflect on what we've discussed. So we looked at the profound wisdom of never making assumptions about things, just allowing them to be as they are, and then also not placing blame on external things when we do make assumptions. Okay. So then we also looked at how to build the reasoned or the rational mind according to the Stoics. So that allows us to be self-aware of how we're feeling and of when we're making assumptions. Then we have the self-examination, which allows us to ask questions like, why am I feeling this way? Why did I make this assumption? Why did I assume that it was going to be this way? And then the power of self-determination. So the power to take responsibility of your own life and then to act how you see best. Remember Epictetus's words. It's one of the most profound quotes there is. It's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us which really matters. That is the key message from today's video. And now I encourage you to take these lessons into your own lives. So the next time that you find yourself in a situation where you're jumping to conclusions, or maybe you're looking to place the blame on somebody else or something else, stop and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel so upset or angry or disappointed or sad or whatever the emotion might be. And then ask yourself, am I making assumptions? Okay. Have I made an assumption here? And then ask yourselves, why did I make that assumption? Okay. Once you've got to that point, you can then start to ask yourself, okay, these are the facts. What can I do now to make the best of the situation? Or what can I do to move forward in the best way possible? And that's the self-determination part. Okay. Now, this simple act of introspection can be incredibly powerful. And once you start making this a habit, soon you won't be jumping to any conclusions, and you won't be placing blame on anything else outside of yourselves. And this will allow you to always make the best decisions to truly make your life extraordinary. Okay, I believe this is one of the greatest things you can do. Resolve to stop making assumptions and stop placing blame and taking responsibility for determining your own path in life. Because remember, as Epictetus said, for nothing outside my reasoned choice can hinder or harm it. My reasoned choice alone can do this to itself. So your power is in your response, in your perspective, and in the choices you make for yourself and for your life. So that's going to do it for today's video, guys. So please leave a comment, share your thoughts and your experiences. How do you see yourself applying these concepts in your own life? Or maybe what situations do you think you could apply this in your own life? And remember, you never know who your thoughts, your experiences, and your words are going to help. So leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear from your experience as well. So thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end there, guys. If you did find this video helpful or useful, please give it a like, a thumbs up. Also share it with any of your friends or family or anyone else who you think will benefit from it, so we can make this a ripple effect and help as many people as possible. And also don't forget to subscribe for more content and more videos just like this. But until next time, guys, I'll leave you as I always do and encourage you to make your life extraordinary. It's up to you. You have the power. And until next time, guys,